If you're 50 and your life feels heavier than it should, this isn't random, and it isn't bad luck. It's what happens when a system slowly takes more from you than it gives back. I'm 60 now, and this is a book I wrote to myself at the age of 50, when I finally had to admit that nothing had blown up, but nothing was working anymore either. A lot of men hit that point without one big failure to point to. You did what you were supposed to do. You worked. You showed up. You carried responsibility longer than you should have. And somehow you still ended up heavier, more financially boxed in, and more alone than you ever planned on being. Nothing broke all at once. Life just kept taking, year after year. If this sounds familiar, it's not because you were lazy, stupid, or weak. It's because you trusted that grinding it out would eventually turn into stability. You stayed in systems that quietly drained your energy, your money, and your attention. And by the time you saw it clearly, time wasn't as forgiving as it used to be. What you're about to hear is the foreword and introduction to that book. It's not here to pump you up. It's not here to make you feel better. It's here to lay out what actually went wrong and what has to change if the next 10 to 20 years are going to be lighter instead of heavier. This book is about correction, about cutting what drains you, about rebuilding your life so it finally supports you instead of constantly leaning on you. This is the opening of Fat, Broke, and Alone at 50. And this is where we stop pretending things will just work themselves out. Copyright Jeff Morgan, all rights reserved. Forward. I'm writing this to myself because by 50, you were done. Not dramatic, not suicidal, just empty in a way that doesn't show up on the outside. You'd done what you were told. You got educated. You served. You worked. You showed up. You carried responsibility longer than you should have without stopping to ask whether it was still building anything. On paper, there was no reason to be as worn down as you were. You had advanced degrees. You had years of military service. You had work experience that should have counted for something. You weren't lazy, stupid, or unserious. But by 50, there was nothing left to give. No surplus, no buffer, just exhaustion and the sense that whatever system you were inside of had taken everything it was going to take. This book exists because that realization doesn't come with instructions. What failed wasn't effort. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't character. It was the assumption that doing what you were told would compound into stability, that if you kept meeting obligations, the structure would eventually hold. It didn't. The obligations kept coming. The margins never did. You stayed in situations that consumed more than they returned. You tolerated chaos longer than you should have. You let other people's decisions shape your financial and mental load without putting hard limits in place. You trusted that endurance was enough. By 50, endurance had become the problem. This isn't a book about blame. It's not about revisiting old decisions or replaying resentment. It's about correction. Not correction of who you are, but correction of how your life is set up. The years after 50 don't forgive the same mistakes the years before it did. Energy doesn't rebound the same way. Recovery isn't automatic. Margin has to be designed, not hoped for. I'm writing this at 60 because that's far enough away to see what mattered and what didn't. The men who are steady at this age aren't the ones who were the most driven or the most virtuous. They're the ones who stopped leaking energy, money, and attention into systems that didn't give anything back. They learned to design their lives around sustainability instead of endurance. That's what this book is for. It's not here to motivate you. Motivation won't save you. It's not here to comfort you. Comfort is how you got stuck. It's here to explain what to remove, what to protect, and what to rebuild so the next 10 to 20 years don't collapse under the same weight as the last ones did. This book assumes you're capable. It assumes you can act once things are explained clearly enough. It doesn't flatter you, and it doesn't punish you. It just lays out cause and effect, and then leaves you to decide whether you want the future to be lighter or heavier than the present. You don't need to become someone else to fix this. You need to stop living inside systems that quietly drain you and start building ones that actually hold. That's what follows. Introduction. If you are 50 and you are overweight, alone, and financially unstable, then the way you've been living hasn't been working. That doesn't mean you're stupid, unlucky, or broken. It means that over a long stretch of time, you made decisions that felt tolerable when you made them and costly later on. You chose what reduced friction in the moment and accepted the bill without looking too closely at it. You didn't wreck your life in one move. You wore it down. Most of those choices didn't feel reckless. They felt reasonable. Comfort was easy to reach. Relief was immediate. Convenience asked less of you than discipline did. None of that set off alarms. That's why it worked. Over time, those decisions stacked up and produced the situation you're in now. What's different now is an insight. It's time. Up until this point, mistakes could be dismissed as temporary. You could tell yourself there was room to recover, that income would improve, that your body would bounce back, that you'd deal with things once you had more space. At 50, those assumptions stop being harmless. The next 10 years aren't just another phase. They determine whether the years after that are manageable or tight, stable or desperate. Whether you like the word or not, this is now about retirement. Not retirement as a dream, and not retirement as a number on a statement, but whether you'll have the option to stop working without everything collapsing. Whether work will be something you choose to do or something you're forced to keep doing because stopping isn't possible. That outcome is being decided now. If you keep living the way you've been living, the future isn't uncertain. It's predictable. You'll still be carrying weight that limits your energy. You'll still be paying for decisions made years earlier. You'll still be dependent on income to support obligations that never paid you back. And you'll probably still be telling yourself you'll deal with it soon, even as soon runs out. This isn't about fear. It's about math, biology, and time. Your body doesn't get more forgiving after 50. Debt doesn't get easier to carry. Habits don't loosen on their own. If you keep choosing the path that asks the least of you today, you don't stay where you are. You slide. 10 years is enough time to change direction, but only if you're clear about what those 10 years are for. They're not for chasing status. They're not for making up for lost time. They're not for proving anything to anyone. They're for setting up the rest of your life. This decade is about lowering your expenses until work stops owning you. About getting your health to a level where your body cooperates instead of arguing with you every morning. About simplifying things so one problem doesn't turn into five. You may think your situation is complicated. It isn't. The details are messy, but the structure is simple. You've been spending more than your life could support. You've been carrying liabilities that gave you very little back. You've been eating in ways that worked against your body. You've been avoiding discomfort instead of dealing with it. Over time, those choices compounded, and now they're all due at once. Nothing about this is mysterious. Intentions aren't enough anymore. Awareness isn't enough. Wanting things to improve isn't enough. What's required now is accurate thinking about cause and effect, and the willingness to live according to that thinking even when it's uncomfortable. You don't need to become exceptional. You don't need to reinvent yourself. You don't need to win. You need to decide whether you're setting yourself up to retire or setting yourself up to work until you die. As you read, keep one question in mind. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just plainly. What will the 60-year-old version of you be forced to live with because of what you tolerate now? Everything that follows exists to help you stop drifting and start answering that question with what you do, not what you tell yourself. If you want the full book, it's available on Kindle. Search my name on Amazon or use the link in the description below.